Okay, this is the sit rep for day 3 of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Current time is almost 21:30 hours Eastern in the United States. I have a bunch of info. There is not so much for changing of the lines for advancements, but down here in the Crimea, the maps I'm looking at that people do have, it looks like the Russians occupy everything from the Dnieper River south and going off to the east here somewhere. I'm not exactly sure where the front lines is. There was some videos of people celebrating in Kherson when I got up this morning, saying they had liberated the city from the Russians, but I found absolutely no story whatsoever saying that the city had been occupied by the Russians. It sounds like they are still south of the Dnieper River. They have not been able to put in a successful crossing. Over in the Donbass region, no word at all. Likely the fighting is still extremely heavy over there. I did find out one of the reasons why Mariupol is such a heavy engagement area in that area is it is considered part of the Donbass, and then that would become the major or only port for the Donbass region. Whether it is as an independent state or becomes part of Russia again. Reportedly, there is still extremely heavy fighting going in around Kharkov. There is one intel report came in this evening. Russian forces are pushing forward out of around Belgorod, heading towards Kharkov. There have been multiple sightings of TOS-1s, TOS-1 launchers moving towards Kharkov. These are multiple launch rocket systems that fire thermobaric warhead rockets and also fuel-air explosive rockets. This is a bombardment weapon that can take out a grid square. When these rounds go off, if it's thermobaric, it produces a massive fireball which uses up all the oxygen in the area. The fuel-air explosive, when those go off, it causes a massive pressure wave, destroying field fortifications and basically liquefying the internal organs of any defender that's in that region. So these are weapon systems that are used against field fortifications or areas of heavy resistance. There's no talk about the fighting up around Sumy, which was the flanking maneuver that was to the north of Kharkov. I do not have a frontline trace on it, but it looks like it has not made it that far away from Sumy in the last 24 hours. Down along Moldova, no talk at all about any more diversionary attacks going on. The Moldovans have opened up the border and they are taking in refugees now. Up in the north, the fight, the main push out of Belarus towards Kiev is stalled. The main body, the U.S. Pentagon is saying, is about 20 miles north of Kiev. That's the main body. It's not known where the exact frontline trace is of the troops right now. There is talk about Russian troops in Kiev itself. I will cover that. The flanking maneuver to the east near Chernihiv is still getting the snot beaten out of it. What we're seeing all across these areas here, from Kharkov to Kiev, The Russian military has seriously underestimated the Ukrainian army. The Ukrainian army and their old-ass T-64s, which are about 60 years old, are going toe-to-toe with the Russian T-72s, T-80s, T-90s, and they are holding their own. Someone asked me a question on that stuff, and I told them it is an outdated weapon system, but the T-64 has a 125 millimeter main gun. It is an older version of the cannon that is in the T-72, T-80, and T-90. So it's the same caliber, it's just an older model, and it seems to be doing very good against the more updated Russian armor. And as I mentioned yesterday, keep in mind that these T-64s are also getting support by infantry that are equipped with javelins and NLAWs. They are also getting artillery support. So that little combined arms team is kicking the crap out of the Russian armored columns and stalling them. Now, the fighting in Kiev. Mentioned this yesterday. The Ukrainian Ministry of Defense is now stating that these are forward reconnaissance elements. Some of these are also sounding like they are paratroopers, and that's what it's looking like from some of the footage coming off the ground that people are posting on TikTok, Facebook, and other platforms. There's also reports of Russian Spetsnaz being inside Kiev also. The current assessment is that these troops are in Kiev trying to get a feel for the defensive for the defenses in the city, how many troops are in the city, and how much militia is in the city. So how bad will the fighting be? And as mentioned yesterday, some of those Russians have taken Ukrainian uniforms off Ukrainian dead, dressing up as police and as military, and they're going around in the city. They're doing attacks, doing sabotage operations. It's not going very well for them. Yes, they are causing panic. Yes, they're causing blue-on-blue conflicts to break out. But they are getting caught fairly easily is what it's sounding like. There is lots of videos of, especially around Kiev, of what look like Russian paratroopers getting dragged out of people's homes and out of buildings. They're being captured by the police and the local militias, and they are beating the piss out of them. They're damn near beating them to death for what's going on around Kiev for those little sabotage attacks and stuff. The Ukrainians are not taking it lightly, and they're not getting scared of it. They're getting pissed off. Now, we do have some info here for the Ukrainian army in general, some for the Russian army in general. Okay, with the Ukrainian army first. The Ukrainian Air Force has not been totally destroyed like the Russians had tried. Somehow, no one's saying for sure how, but Ukrainian pilots are showing up on the battlefield in MiG-29s and Sukhoi 27s. Now, no one knows for certain where these planes are coming from, if these are ones that the Ukrainians had somehow hid before the Russian airstrikes, or if these could be ones that somehow made their way across the border during the nighttime. But the Ukrainian Air Force is still out flying. Reportedly, the Ukrainian air defenses are also being rebuilt. with no word as to if this is equipment that's being pulled out of storage somewhere or if it's equipment that is somehow appearing inside the Ukrainian borders. And I'm not just talking the Stinger missiles. I'm talking, it's sounding like radar sets and other types of surface-to-air missile launchers and air defense artillery. Now, I'll cover that when I get into the Russian army. That'll make more sense on that one. There's some stuff notes I have in here about their territorial defense forces. It'll make more sense if I cover that when I cover the Russian stuff. Now, before I get into the Russian stuff, I will mention here current casualty count as of this evening for Ukraine. Civilians, Fox is reporting it's now 276 KIA over the last 3 days. Around 1,115 wounded amongst the civilian population. The United Nations is now reporting 150,000 refugees have fled the country. The Ukrainian Ministry of Defense put out a report today that the estimates are, along with confirmed, that the Russians have encountered 3,500 KIA and wounded in the last 3 days. Now, for those of you that question that number, think it's very high, the Russians are getting the shit kicked out of them. When they reported that number, they pointed out that when the paradrop was going in around Kiev, Russian air defense successfully took down an Ilyushin 76 transport aircraft on the way to the drop zone, still loaded with paratroopers. And it does not sound like any of those paratroopers got out of that aircraft before it slammed into the ground. And that's a large number of paratroopers that died and contributed to that kill count. Now we'll rush into the Russian army. I should mention around Kiev to the north, there was sightings of TOS-1s, TOS-1 launchers on the way towards Kiev also yesterday. I forgot to mention that. Okay, Russian Army General here. The Pentagon, the U.S. Pentagon, is currently estimating that 50% of the available Russian forces that were gathered around Ukraine before day one of the fighting are currently engaged inside the Ukrainian borders. At approximately 12:35 hours Eastern today, reported by Zero Hedge, the Russian Ministry of Defense issued the order to all Russian forces on the border to enter Ukraine and begin attacks. So all of the Russian units now have received their go orders and will be moving forward into Ukraine here in the next 24 hours. There are reports that so far into the war, the Russians have fired 200 cruise missiles and short-range ballistic missiles into Ukraine. These do include the Iskander missile system, which is getting the media all riled up that, well, the Russians are using Scud-like missiles. I mean, what are they, Saddam Hussein? No, it's a standard piece of equipment in the Russian army. The Russians take indirect artillery systems and rocket systems very seriously, unlike the rest of the world. Okay, here. Now, the Russians, as I said, are getting the shit kicked out of them. And there's some reasons for that. First off, it's now reported that the Russians are only moving during the day. They start their movements at dawn, they stop in the evening, and then put in a hasty defense for the night. Russian troops that have been captured and also questioned are reporting they have no night vision goggles, no night vision equipment, and little to no night operations training. So to counter that, they are literally stopping and hunkering down overnight, which freezes the lines during the night. It allows the Ukrainians to move into a better position so that in the morning when the Russians start moving, then Russian vehicles start exploding. There are reports that the Russian troops are literally leaving their convoys as they're moving through the countryside, stopping at stores to get food from the stores because they don't have much. And when they're in the stores, they are literally asking the Ukrainian shopkeepers, where are we at? These troops are advancing through enemy territory, and they do not even know their current positions. They're asking the local population where they're located. Whew, yes. Now, I mentioned the Russian troops are low on food. And the reason for that is really simple. Ukrainian militias that had stood up before the invasion, that had trained for the invasion, that are in the field behind Russian lines, are ripping the Russian forces a new asshole. They are tearing up the Russians' logistics convoys so badly that Russian frontline units are running out of fuel, ammunition, and food, and this is only the third day of the fighting. Take that, all you fuckers that say a guerrilla force cannot stop a conventional army. In 3 days of fighting, militia, using what weapons they had available to them, are kicking the crap out of a modern military. Do you want proof why there should be a militia? Why a civilian population should be armed? Look at fucking Ukraine. Militias in Ukraine are ripping the attacking forces, the invaders, a new asshole. Reaming them out so damn bad that there's not even enough blood left in there to leave the body. There is video after video after video of destroyed Russian convoys. Bodies laying on the ground, crispy from when the trucks burned. Bodies still sitting in the cabs, burned. The militia is tearing them to pieces behind the front lines. And at the front lines, the Ukrainian army troops are kicking the snot out of the Russian army using Soviet-era equipment. Stuff that is decades older than what the Russians are pouring in. Now, it should be mentioned here that north of Kiev, a reporter, I believe it was from Newsweek, happened to come into an area right after an engagement between the Ukrainian army and the Russian army was over. The prisoners were being marched off the battlefield at that time. The Newsweek reporter talked to a Ukrainian army soldier who was looking at a Russian tank. That Ukrainian soldier turned to the reporter and told him that the Russian equipment is in worse condition than what they have. And what the Ukrainian army has, as I've said multiple times, is Soviet-era stuff. So the stuff that's being sent in, the equipment being sent in with the Russian army troops, is seriously lacking. Maintenance-wise, it's a nightmare. The Russian army is getting their asses handed to them, and they got no one to blame but themselves. Now, for the Ukrainian militias, there was a statement released by an advisor for the presidential chief of staff. I believe his name is Martin Bormann. An advisor to Martin Bormann commented that the territorial defense detachments are working quite effectively. Now, the Ukrainian army and Ukrainian government reportedly has now handed out in 3 days over 70,000 rifles and small arms to the civilian population. When at the distribution centers where a person is given a rifle, magazines, and ammunition, they are told to form 10-man ad hoc units, choose one of them to be their commander, and then they are sent off with some basic training on how to use their weapon, how to perform first aid, some basics on tactics. And from what we're seeing, they're doing pretty damn good. A lot better than anyone, including here in the United States, thought they would. On the diplomatic front, I got confirmation on this today. I heard a rumor on it yesterday. It has been confirmed that Russia threatened Finland and Sweden after the NATO Article 4 meeting. They threatened them that if they joined NATO, there would be very dire consequences involving Russian troops in their countries. Well, the U.S. ambassador, or the Finnish ambassador to the United States, gave a response saying that Finland is not concerned about their threats because of what they're seeing in Ukraine, and reminded the Russians that they kicked their asses before more than once, and that now they're better equipped and they have the best military in Europe. Bring it on. Pretty ballsy, and for the people in Finland, you get a round of applause from me on that. Bravo, brothers. Okay, in the propaganda front, we'll get to that. Let's go into NATO. Okay, today with the developments with NATO. Reportedly, 32 Apache gunships have been deployed out of Germany now into the Baltics. It sounds like they are in Latvia. These are with the U.S. Army. This does not include any from the other European countries, is what it is sounding like, but I cannot confirm that. Now, we are seeing a massive flood of supplies going into Ukraine as of today, and they are already arriving to Ukrainian military units already as of today. So basically, it was approved this morning, and by this afternoon, the shit was already ending up in the troops' hands. Okay, we got the United States. Biden and the U.S. State Department has now authorized $350 million worth of aid. Reportedly, this aid is military aid and will be coming from stocks in Germany. These include body armor, anti-tank weapons, small arms, anti-air defense weaponry, and ammunition. Reportedly, next week, the U.S. Congress is going to be considering a package authorizing an additional $6.1 billion in aid to Ukraine. I want to say right now, if this is cash, it will not make it there. It will disappear before it gets to anyone on the ground. But if they are smart and it is turned into set numbers of equipment it will make it to where it's supposed to go, or at least most of it will, because we know some of it will be diverted to the international black market. It's Ukraine after all. Now, with countries in Europe, we have the Czech Republic is sending 3,000 small arms to Ukraine. These include machine guns, sniper rifles, and sidearms. They are also sending over 4,000 artillery shells. Remember that Czechoslovakia was part of the Warsaw Pact, so this ammunition will work with Ukrainian artillery. Belgium has dispatched fuel, and some of it's already arrived in Ukraine by this afternoon, along with 2,000 small arms. Slovakia is sending in fuel and artillery shells. Poland is sending in convoys of ammunition, multiple, and the first ones have already arrived at Ukrainian units, and more are on the way. The Baltic states are also sending in military aid. Of the Baltic states, the only actual breakdown of equipment that they are sending, the rest of it, no one's really saying how much of what's going. Estonia is sending over 9 D-30 122 millimeter artillery pieces. This is Soviet area towed artillery. It is still used by the Russian army, and they are also sending the shells for them also. Now, another very surprising, very, very shocking commitment came through today. Germany has authorized from their depots, they're sending 1,000 anti-tank guided missiles, and I cannot find out if this is former East German missiles, which would be AT-4s, or if these are Milans. They're also sending in 500 Stingers, 14 armored vehicles, and I do not know if this is gallons or tons. The news story said it's tons. 10,000 tons of fuel. Now, they also have authorized other countries that have German equipment that they can give that equipment to Ukraine. For those of you that do not know, any equipment that comes from Germany, whether it is former Warsaw Pact from East Germany or stuff made by the Germans, there is always a clause that that equipment must only be used for self-defense of that country. It can never be used in offensive actions, and it must never be given to or sold to another country beyond the country that Germany sends it to. When that country is done using it, it is supposed to be returned to Germany. Well, Germany has now said, well, you know what? Go ahead if you want to send that stuff to Ukraine. Which brings us into the next one here. The Netherlands has agreed to send 200 Stingers to Ukraine. And Germany has authorized this now. Netherlands will be sending 50 Panzerfaust 3 launchers and 400 reloads with them to the Ukraine. Greece is also sending in bulk medical supplies and cargo planes from Turkey were seen flying into Poland near the border today, and it is thought that the Turks were offloading UAVs, which are somehow ending up from Poland into Ukraine. Yeah. Things are about to get even funner for the Russians in Ukraine. It's reported today that the United States, since day one of the war, has brought in 14,000 troops into Germany and Poland. This is beyond what was already on the ground in Poland and Germany before the invasion began. Now, on the propaganda front, because I want to get into this, they've been running a story all day about an apartment building being shelled or hit with a missile in Kiev. If you watch the footage and the damage, there is no blast damage on the building. I suspect, I can't confirm this, I suspect what happened is a Ukrainian surface-to-air missile malfunctioned, went off course, and slammed into the building. Because if it was a cruise missile, the warhead would have activated and detonated. I think it was probably an old SAM, because when you see it coming in there, it's belching a lot of smoke and it slams right into the building. It's being reported in U.S. media that the Ukrainians were the ones that were sending out the peace feelers to Russia, and the Russians are saying, no, we're going to destroy you. Remember, this is being put out after about Putin sending the ultimatum to Kiev about the peace negotiations, which I mentioned in the Day 2 video. It's also being pushed in the U.S. media still that President Zelensky is a hero, one of the greatest men alive, and I shit you not, I literally just saw that on Fox News before I started this video. And it's being reported that the United States on day one of the war supposedly pled with Zelensky to leave the country, that we would give them a safe haven, we would give them sanctuary. But Zelensky bravely stood up and said, no, he can't leave his people. He will stay there and fight for Ukraine. Now, it should be mentioned that the week before the invasion, Zelensky had tried leaving Ukraine, tried going to anywhere in Europe that would take him, and every single country that he talked to told him, no, go home, go back to Ukraine, be a man and be a leader for your people. He was denied his request for sanctuary with every single European country he had requested in the week leading up to the invasion. Now they are trying to memory hole that, try to wash over it, talk about him being the war hero. The guy isn't. They're also continuing with pushing the storyline that Putin wants to restore the Soviet Union, or at a minimum, he's trying to make the new Russian Empire and conquer the world. You're seeing a lot of the same shit that they're saying with Putin that you heard them say with Saddam Hussein, and also with Hitler and every other despot over the last 70 years. Basically, it's the same old script. Pick it up, cross out the name for the despot, and this time they're putting in Putin. Now, when I woke up this morning, turned on the news, we started right off the bat with the emotional appeals for American troops to get involved in Ukraine immediately. This is before all the information came out about how hard the Ukrainians are anal raping the Russians right now. So what we had this morning, the Kiev mom, Olena Nice is her name, Gnes. She was doing a interview with Neil Cavuto, and she was making sure to show her 3 young kids. They always had to be in the shot. Her baby always had to be in her arms, talking about how scared she is for her children and herself, how she's having to live in a bomb shelter for 3 days now, that her husband is off bravely fighting the Russians in his historic brave struggle. It was a continuous, round-the-clock, non-stop, constant emotional appeal. Just continuous, non-stop, in your face. Now, some of the footage that they were showing of her in the background, she's been doing videos out of Kiev, trying to get appeal to the world. And to me, it really looks like she is inside a government bomb shelter because it's way, way too nice for an apartment building basement in Eastern Europe. Now, when she did the video or the interview with Neil Cavuto, it looked like she had been moved into a hallway, probably a maintenance area inside that government shelter, because they kept trying to keep the camera from going in one particular direction, which when you were looking at the video, it's to her right as she's looking at the camera. They did screw up at one time. They showed down the hallway to her right, and the lights were on, and you could clearly see she was still inside that really decked out high-end bomb shelter. Well, they quickly turned the camera away, and then when it turned back in that direction again, the lights were off in that hallway. Magically, they went out. And you were supposed to believe that she's in this old ratty basement underneath an apartment building. I think this lady is working for the Ukrainian government. Now, something that kind of got me to, and I pointed this out to someone when we talked about it today, that lady, if you look at her, to me she looks like a skinhead chick out of the 1970s, 1980s. She's got the shaved head and all that. I half expected to see a swastika tattoo or a knight's cross underneath her white blouse she was wearing. Now, over into the China theater. This afternoon at approximately 15:45 hours Eastern, China completely changed their narrative concerning Russia. I've mentioned it in the last two videos what their stance was concerning the Russians. They supported Putin and all that, and they were reportedly giving the United States a cold shoulder every time we were trying to get Xi involved to get Putin to back down. Well, at 15:45 hours today, Eastern, the narrative changed. China is now saying that they want Russia to pursue a diplomatic end, and that they have been trying for 3 months now to convince Putin to not invade Ukraine, to think of the people. Wow. Yeah, it's complete 180 on that one. And reportedly things are going so bad in Ukraine now, it's making the Chinese second guess going into Taiwan, which I find surprising. So that's what I got on the current situation. I will make a note here. Tomorrow, day 4, I might do a sit-rep video. I might not. I got confirmation today from Kaz over at Fourth Dimension. We're going to try to do a quick live stream tomorrow, Sunday, the 27th of February at 14:30 hours Eastern. Yes, I think it was 14:30 hours. 2:30 p.m. We're going to, well, it might be 4:30. I gotta look it up. The info will be in the description of this video. We're gonna talk about what's going on with the invasion. I will probably put out the intel I have up to that point, and I really, really, really want to hear Kaz's take on how he thinks the Russian-Ukraine situation is going to be exploited here in the United States. He's got some theories on this, and I want to hear them out. So come over to his channel. He's got a video posting over at Fourth Dimension channel, and I'm just going to put it in a comment, okay? I will pin a comment at the top for this video when it gets posted over at YouTube. saying, giving the channel address and the time of the live stream. For you guys over at BitChute, because this video, the day 3 sit rep, may not even be uploaded by that point because BitChute is really slowing down my uploads for some reason. They've basically tripled the amount of time for the uploads over at BitChute for some reason because of these sit rep videos. They didn't do it for other stuff. It's just these sit rep videos are being tripled in upload time. I will try to load the live stream over at BitChute, since you guys might end up missing it, so that you guys can get the day 4 sit rep of what's going on the battlefield, what info's been coming out. So if you want more intel during the day as to what's going on in Ukraine, I am constantly posting stuff as I come across it over at my Patreon channel. You do not need to be a member to view it. You can just go there, click on the links, read the articles, watch the news stories, watch the videos. So there you go. That's what I got. See you at the live stream tomorrow. And for all my engineer brothers in the Patriot and militia movements, always remember Essayons.